All right, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to our March Women in Construction Speaker Series event. My name is Celia Polman and I'm a mechanical engineer with Thompson Consulting Engineers in our Virginia Beach office. I launched the Women in Construction Speaker Series in January of this year with the goal of providing a platform for successful women in the architecture, engineering, and construction fields to share their experiences, advice, and discuss the unique challenges that are faced by women in this industry. We hope that the series continues to provide value for you all and open discussions that promote the growth of women in our industry. And if there's anything you all would like to see from us or hear about, please let us know. You can reach out to me either via email or on LinkedIn, and I'll put my email in the chat later. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items to go over. So we'll start as a interview format between our guest Dana and myself. And during this portion, if there's anything that pops up, if you have questions or comments, you can feel free to type them in the chat. There's also a Q&A portion, and Megan will help me keep track of that and make sure that we address those. As with our previous sessions, we will do about 40 minutes or so of the interview, and then with about 20 minutes left, we'll open the floor up to everybody who's attending. And at that point, you all can feel free to unmute yourselves if you're comfortable with that, or continue to type in the chat any kind of questions that you still have for Dana, things that she didn't hit on that you'd like to hear about, or any of your input experience that you want to share. We'd like that to be kind of a comfortable chat portion. This whole session is being recorded, as you saw when you logged on, and we will upload the recording to YouTube along with all of our previous sessions. And you can share that with anyone who you think would enjoy the content that we'll share today and the discussion that we'll have who wasn't able to attend. So now on to our guest, Dana Fox. Dana joins us from Richmond Public Schools, where she is the Chief Operating Officer. And as the COO of Richmond Public Schools, Dana oversees the day-to-day operations of the facilities, transportation, technology services, procurement and property management, risk management, and new school construction departments, serving the school division's nearly 22,000 students. Dana earned her degree in construction management from East Carolina University and began her career in commercial construction. She was involved in the construction of the first LEED building on James Madison University's campus and led critical construction projects in Henrico and Goochland counties. Dana was awarded the 2023 BizSense RVA Power Women Emerging Leader Award and serves as the Virginia Emerging Leader for Southeastern Association of School Business Officials. She's passionate about her community and has served as the past president and currently serves as the vice president of advocacy in her local PTA. She lives in Hanover County with her husband, 5 children, dog, cat, pig, and chickens. And Dana has spent her career advocating for gender equity in industries where women have been traditionally underrepresented. And so we are so excited to have her joining us today. Thank you, Dana, so much for spending your time with us and helping us promote women in construction.
Thank you for the amazing introduction. You did that well. It always looks so much better on paper, and then people start to say it, and I just instantly feel weird. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I am really excited. I will say, just by nature of me, I should probably give a disclaimer to say that the opinions and views that I share are not that of Richmond Public Schools or the superintendent or the school board, that they are my own. So with that, let's party. Excited.
Awesome. Yeah. Is there anything that I missed that you'd like to share about yourself or your career?
I think that was a lot. Happy to dive into the history of things as you ask questions and we get into the conversation, but just that gives an overview of where I sit currently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Well, let's start with a little bit more about yourself. What are your interests? How did you get where you are now? What was your path? What drew you into this?
Great. Sure. So I went to high school in Southside in Virginia. So I'm pseudo a Richmond native. I grew up in Chesterfield. my family is I come from a military family, and so my goal, I think, when I was in high school was to follow suit there. I will say when I was a junior in high school, 9/11 happened, and so my parents were very, very upset by my desire to join the military. So I had a quick pivot there to do something else. I played softball my entire life and had a couple offers at that point to play softball at some schools that were pretty far away, and I was just tired and burnt out, and so I did not choose that path. So I went down to East Carolina with a friend who was going there. She had to go for some other things, and so I tagged along and just fell in love with the campus and fell in love with the school and where it was. It was still kind of close to home, and decided that I wanted to apply, and I was accepted. And I kid you not, I chose the School of Construction Management off of a brochure that came with a packet of information. Because I truly at that point had no idea what I wanted to do. I really thought that I would join the military. I thought that was going to be the life that I would have. And then our country was at war, and it sounds like a very cowardly thing to back out of. But when you're 18 years old and your parents are losing their minds about your decision, you sort of kind of walk that back. And so that's what I did. But I saw that they had a construction management program on the brochure. That's something that kind of piqued my interest. And that's where it started. Now, I will say I did not realize what I was in for when I selected that as a major. I knew that I had 4 years to do school because I was paying for it myself. I worked through college. But it was interesting because one of the first realizations I had that I was going to be sort of the only female around was at the orientation for the construction management program. So I'm sitting in class and not a class, but it was a classroom, and folks are kind of filing in and sitting down, and I'm sitting there minding my business, 18 years old, freshman, starting college, away from home, and a guy comes in and sits next to me, and all was well. I didn't know anyone at the time that was in the room, and he leaned over to me and said, he's like, "It looks like we're the minority." And I was very kind of shocked by that. I think my face was like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And he followed up, he said, "I'm the only Black guy and you're the only chick." And I look around, and sure enough, there are a couple hundred people in the room, all white men. And so that was sort of like I thought it was an odd thing to say to me, but also I was so naive and did not realize that construction management was not likely one that was going to be full of females. And so, and it wasn't. My whole freshman year, I did not have a single female in any of my classes, construction management classes, that is. So it was interesting to have that. And then I went through fall semester, and then spring semester, I saw walking to class one day a guy who had been in my fall semester class. I'd never spoke to him before. He comes up and he asked me, he said, "Are you a construction management major?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Oh, I thought it was a mistake on your schedule last semester." So that was realization number 2. And at that point for me, it's like, okay, I'm one of those people where if you tell me I can't, I will do it twice and take a picture. So that really kind of lit a fire under me to pursue this and to not back out of it. And even though it wasn't something that I thought that I would pursue, coming out of high school, I really sort of fell in love with it and with the work to be done there, and being the only female in so many classes. And by the time I graduated, there was four young ladies who graduated from the School of Construction Management. Some transferred in midway, and some we just didn't have classes together, but ultimately we did. So it was just a very interesting space to be in. I will say I had a professor one time that said I was sitting in the front of the class, not because not because I wanted to. I couldn't see. My eyeglass prescriptions needed updating, and I was a broke college kid, so I really could not see. I had to sit in the front. Again, the only female in the class. It was a structural analysis class, and I will never forget the professor standing right in front of my desk and saying, "You're a young lady. Do you understand this?" And it was an equation on the board. And I think for him, it was a way to say that it should be easy to understand, because the guys in the class, I don't think were grasping it. But the way he stood in front of me and kind of put me on the spot to say, you're a young lady, do you understand what this is? Because, you know, essentially everyone should know how to do this. And so there are a lot of moments like that and in college, but I did it. I graduated in 4 years, and it was really exciting time. But that's how I got to construction management. Long answer.
Yeah, wow. Had you ever been in situations that were so male dominated up to that point, or was that kind of a brand new situation that you're shoved into, you have to prove yourself?
Yeah, well, no, I had never been in that sort of space. And I think just being naive, and that I was under the impression that, you know, anyone would do, if you wanted to do it, you would. And so it just seemed like there were women that didn't want to do that because I'm the only one there. And so it's like, where is everyone? And it actually, by the end of my freshman year, I really didn't have any friends in college because all of my classes were full of men. I shouldn't say men because they weren't really grown at the time, but boys. So I ended up joining a sorority so that I could have some girlfriends and have some camaraderie in college. Because I will tell you, being the only girl in a construction class, it might sound glamorous, but no one really wants to be your friend.
Mm.
And it was funny because my family didn't quite understand why I was choosing that major. They had no idea, like, what are you going to do with that? Doesn't make any sense. And my grandma, God bless her, she said, well, you shouldn't have any trouble finding a husband. Um,
Grandma.
Gotta love grandma. But I did. I joined a sorority so that I had some girlfriends, and of course, all of those great, wonderful people. They were education majors or nursing majors or
Mhm.
interior design majors, and so I'm the construction management major, and they're calling me like, "Hey, we need you to hang this picture in the living room, or we need you to fix this," because they didn't understand it either. They're like, "What? We don't know. You're going to school for construction. Clearly, you can probably use a hammer." So it was interesting, but no, prior to that, I had no experience with being the Lone Ranger in a male dominated space.
Yeah. Wow. And then I'm sure moving from graduating to your first jobs, that didn't really change the situation at all. We're still male dominated in the job force as well. Did you encounter any additional barriers in terms of getting hired, getting started, being taken seriously, all of those kind of issues?
Yeah, so I graduated college in 2007. The economy was great, things were great. I had a job. I signed a contract before I even graduated from college. So I graduated and started a big girl job. You know, I was getting paychecks that had a comma in them. I had health insurance. I had all of the things. I had a nice office, little cube thing that I was super proud of. So it was really exciting. Like that work was really exciting. I immediately got put on the James Madison University project. So I was living on the job site, doing the work. Really had a great time. Had a great career started. Really. Well, then 2009 happened, and you know, we hit the recession. The company I was working for had a very large layoff that I was a part of. And they don't teach you that in school. They don't teach you that, hey, there are times where a big part of your organization can be laid off and what that looks like. And so it was very jarring for me. And unfortunately, I had by then had just got married. We had a baby. I just bought a house, so I had a mortgage. And 5 months after I closed on the house, you know, I lost my job. And so that was really insane. And the construction industry was insane. But I had to just sort of pivot, and I started bartending. I had bartended and waited tables through college. And so I started doing that. And then going on interviews, any interview I could get with construction companies. And I will say the by and large, the biggest barrier was the actual interview, and it never failed. The question I always got was, why are you in construction? Why construction? Why construct? Why, you know, and it was because I was a woman, and a young woman at that point. You know, I was in my very early 20s. And so I got that question constantly. And you always try to at first I tried to answer it the way I thought they would want to hear it. And then I started answering it like my genuine feelings around why I'm in construction. And it never seemed to take because I wasn't getting a job. And now granted, the market was really crappy at the time, but I was doing my best to kind of stay in that work. Like I knew I wanted to stay in construction and do that work. So, and then on top of that, as another year passed in 2011, my mom passed away unexpectedly. And she was 47 years old. She died in her sleep. There's a lot of things. At the time, my kiddo was 2 years old. So that was a whole thing. And then 6 months after that, my stepdad was diagnosed with cancer. And so then he was very sick and I had to care for him. So there were a lot of moving parts there. And I was exhausted. I was sort of depleted. I was defeated. And then I went on another interview for a contractor that built multifamily affordable housing. And so apartment buildings basically all around the country. And of course I get in the interview and the guy's super nice guy. And he says, why are you in construction? And because I am the way I am, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to throw it out. I'm like, to find a husband. That's literally what I said. Because at that point, I did not care. I had gone on so many interviews. My mom died. My dad has cancer. I have this kid at home. I'm tired. So I just off the cuff was like, to find a husband. And his response was, how's that going for you? I'm like, well, I'm married, so I guess it worked. And it kind of really turned it into this sort of banter, but I ended up getting the job. Just, I don't know if it was from that answer or not, but it was a job that I truly loved and was really grateful for in the workspace. But yeah, I think it's been challenging in different ways over many years, and having to sort of shift the work that I do as it relates to my life and to the economy too.
Yeah, and I can't imagine that many of the men that they interviewed for those same positions were asked why they're in construction. Yeah, that
and I
would
will
get
say,
exhausting.
I won't name the company, but a very large construction company in the Richmond area. I was interviewing with that gentleman, and he asked me. He said, "Do you own any power tools?" And I said, "Yes," because I did. And he said, "What power tools do you own?" Now, this was not part of the job, right? This wasn't a you need your own power tool kind of position. He asked me what kind of power tools I owned, and it was a very condescending way, I guess, to understand whether or not I knew how to use power tools. And so that interview ended pretty early, but it just is. I laugh about this, that I could have a Netflix series with all the dumb shit that men have said to me in this industry. I think we all could maybe, but not in the sense that you would think. A lot of folks think it's in the space of like just being a female and a male and like in a sexual harassment kind of way. No, it's really just in a you're testing me, you're testing my intelligence, you're testing my ability to stay calm and all of those things. And so so I've had a lot of it, but also there are some really wonderful folks in this industry who I've worked alongside. But yeah, I think we've all had a little bit of that, some of us more than others.
Yeah. And especially for the newer women in the field, what kind of advice do you have for them in like portraying themselves in those kind of interactions to come off as confident, come off as competent too? Because I think that's a lot of what's questioned.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe people aren't used to having to prove themselves in that way.
Yeah, I would say with that, and this is something that I did early on in my career, you don't need to say everything you know. So I feel like there were spaces that I would get in where I would just talk a lot and say to try to prove myself in the space that I was in, and tell everybody everything I know. And you don't ever want to be the smartest person in the room. I've learned that if you feel like you are the smartest person in the room, find another room. Because you really do just need to keep learning and keep cultivating relationships, which is huge when you're early on. And even now, in any space that you're in, cultivate relationships with folks, men, women, and really work towards that, because it's going to play such a huge role in your career year over year. I have folks that I worked with that were supervisors and colleagues from decades ago that I'm still very much in touch with, and go to them, some of them, for advice and different things. And so I think that that's huge as you're starting this. And also be in this kind of space. Find these forums where there are people like you, and that can share stories, share concerns, share, the highs and the lows. And, because it happens that way. It happens where you're going to have really good days and you feel like everything is lining up and your career is great. And then you're going to have days where you're just getting kicked in the gut. And it happens to all of us. It happens to me daily. So I think that that's really important as you're starting this work, is to just kind of take ownership of what you have, but also knowing that you bring something really valuable to the table. And truly, probably all the women on this call can build the damn table. So like, keep that in mind, own your space, be there, and folks are really interested in what you have to say. And it's a much different space than it was even when I graduated college, which is a while ago, but I've seen such a huge change year over year, because I've been in this industry almost 20 years. And so it's interesting how it's changed, where now there's pretty good chances when I go on a job site, there's going to be at least one female on that job site. So that's huge. And it's because of these sort of things. And so it's super important for, as you're entering this world, to take note of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just to speak to that, my experience in the civil engineering field, when I was getting my degree, I'd say we were about 30% female to male, which is a completely different situation than for women graduating. So
Yeah,
progress has really been made.
it's huge, and celebrate that, name that. And a couple years ago, I was on a pre-construction call, and of the meeting, the project owner, the project manager, the civil engineer, and the architect were all female. And that's huge. That had never happened to me before. And so I named it. I'm like, listen, shout out to you ladies. Like, this is really a big deal. And so, yeah, it's changing, and it's exciting, and it's really fun to be a part of it.
Yeah. And I know you've spent a lot of time in your career trying to promote that and advocate for the women in our field. What would you say you see as some of the most impactful ways to do that? Like, what's made the most difference that you've noticed?
Having conversations early with young people. And I want to say young people because I feel like we're also in another shift where it's not just women in construction, it's young people in construction. We are really hitting this cliff of folks who are retiring with a wealth of knowledge that will likely not be shared, because young people just do not see this industry as something that they want to pursue. Especially young women and their ability to work in this space. So many people think you have a construction management degree, you're carrying around a toolbox and that's what you're doing. That's not true. I mean, that is part of it, but that's not, you can do so many other things. So I will share, for example, I did a career day at my son's school for fourth graders and shared out the work that I do around construction, and it was a really great conversation with young people, and typically around the school I'm known as Truman's mom or Drake's mom or Grayson. My kids, I'm not Dana, I'm not anybody but somebody's mom. And I'll never forget, a few days after that presentation I did at the school for the fourth graders, I'm in the grocery store and by myself, and I'm just looking, and there's a lady down the aisle a little bit in the same aisle with her daughter, and I hear, "That's the construction mom." And she's pointing at me, and I look, and I'm like, what in the world? And there's no one else in the aisle but me and this woman. And so the woman came up and was like, "Hey, she's been talking about that for the last several days about your presentation." And I didn't know the lady, but it was just really, really neat. And it was really impactful for me, and really just kind of a full circle moment that this young girl, she'll never know my name, but she'll remember the conversation I had around construction, and I'm the construction mom. And so that's really powerful. And so any time that you can get in that space to do that is huge, and take that moment, talking to young ladies and also to young men, just really promote this industry. It's crazy how it's changed. As when I started, we had superintendents and changes were made to drawings over a cigarette at the tailgate of the truck. I didn't smoke, but I was standing there. So it was done on a handshake, and that was that. And now it's so different. And it's really important to just connect with folks in this space and then share that knowledge down the pike, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And like we've always said, it's really important, even though this is aimed at an audience of women in the construction industry, it's just as important for our male counterparts to get this message and understand the differences in challenges and stuff that we've had
Yeah.
along our careers. If we want to make even further changes, the whole industry has to be involved. It's not just, we can't just be talking to each other. We have to talk to everybody as well.
Right. And really, really champion each other. I will say, I've been in a space where women challenge other women, where if you're not the boots on the ground, if you're not wearing, the hard hat, and you're not on the job site, that what you're contributing to this is not as important. And we shouldn't be doing that. So we really need to champion each other. We really need to advocate for one another, talk about a woman in construction in a space that she's not in. So if you're talking to someone and hey, you have this colleague who would be great for this role or great for this, share that knowledge in that space, and just be sure that we're advocating for one another, that we're not competing. There is plenty of room in this business for all of us, and we are better because we're in this industry, and the industry is better for us being here too. So just remember that.
Yeah, definitely. Let me see. So we talked a little bit about, you've mentioned like that you're a mom, and work-life balance has come up a lot in our previous sessions. So I'd like to hear a bit about how you balance that, your career responsibilities, your family responsibilities, the whole situation. Yeah.
Sure. So I love when people say work-life balance. Like, I hate the word balance, because really this stuff is hard. It is really, really hard. And I say stuff, I want to say another word, but it is hard as hell to be in this business, to be a mom or a parent, and have a work-life balance. I don't call it work-life balance. I call it boundaries, work-life boundaries.
Okay.
You really have to identify what your priorities are going to be. And I do that. I use the analogy about juggling plates. So sometimes the plates are paper, sometimes they're plastic, sometimes they're fine china. So what is your fine china? And for me, that's my morning. So I am one that I will not sacrifice my mornings with my kids. I want my kids to see me every morning when they wake up. I want to send them off to school or where they're going. That is super important to me, and something that is a boundary that I will not I will not sacrifice my mornings for meetings or different things. I don't schedule meetings before 10 a.m. Not to say I'm not at work, but before 10 a.m., I don't schedule meetings. I schedule them at 10 a.m. or later, just so I can be in my own space for work, get clear-minded. But really the mornings are super important for me, because there are multiple nights a week that we're not at home, that we're shuffling around doing things, but also in the work that I have now, at least twice a month, I'm at board meetings at night, and I'm not home until late. My kids are in bed. So the mornings are really my fine china. There are other things that kind of come and go. But I will say, in terms of the work-life balance, it's just more about making boundaries. And I think once you communicate those things with the folks that you're working with your supervisors, it becomes easier. And I think over the years, and we talked about this before, I have never worked for a supervisor who was a man who did not have a wife at home with his children. So I've never met anyone in this business who was a male who had a wife that also worked. I don't have that luxury, so I don't have a wife or a husband at home. that's taking care of my kids. And truly, even if my husband did stay home, I still want to be present for my children. I'm a mom. Like by nature, there are things that I'm not going to allow someone else to do for me. So that's a different shift when you're talking about the work that you're doing and you're having to do all of these other things. And if there's any moms on this call, you know that getting out of the door in the morning is an Olympic sport. Like you're negotiating with toddler terrorists and you're trying to get shoes on and your backpacks. Like just this morning, my son, who was a freshman in high school, forgot his baseball pants. So I had to bring his baseball pants to school, and all those things come up. But I really think that making boundaries is super important for the work that you're in, and also just for your mental piece. And I do want to say this whole hustle and grind culture is bullshit. Like, just don't take a nap, like take a gardening class, do something. Don't this hustle. Like, we got to stop that narrative. But do the work and show up and be present and do good work, but also just take care of the space that you have outside of work, because really work should not be equal to your personal life. But it is a huge part of it, and the people you work with are a huge part of it. And so that really, really matters too.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, communication, I'm sure, with their husband too, about how you all are going to coordinate the kids and work through that. Was that something that kind of naturally happened between you two, or like was it clear from the start, yes, I'm doing my career and we're going to work this out together, including that, or how did that go for you?
Yeah, so I think I made it very clear early on in our relationship that my career was a non-negotiable, that I was going to remain in my career. I was going to continue to work, and he really supports that. My husband really supports that. But I also had to make some shifts, and listening to Chelsea when you all had her last month, who was wonderful, by the way, she made a whole career shift for her family, which is huge. And a lot of us kind of get in that space where we have to do that. I was unwilling to shift my construction career, but what I did have to do was kind of shift it to public sector work. So I was in private sector. I was traveling on job sites, doing all the things. I had to shift over to public sector because I wanted to be home every night. And when you work in the public sector realm, you're home every night. And that was a guarantee for me. I tried other things to kind of keep me office bound in terms of like estimating and things like that. That wasn't my jam. So I shifted into a public sector life, which is what I've been in for many years. And that works for me because then I'm home every night. There are nights where I'm having to be at work late, but I'm not traveling around. I'm not gone for days at a time or weeks at a time. And that's super important for me. And so, but as it relates to me and my career, it's important for me to have this. It's important for my daughter to see it. I have, you mentioned I had 5 kids. I have 4 boys, and then I have a baby girl who's 3. And so it's huge for me to stay in this work, for her to see it, and for my sons to see it. And I'm just super proud of the work that I'm doing. And my kids are kind of coming into their own to understand the kind of work that I do. Years ago, one of my sons thought I made boxes, which I think he meant buildings, but he thought I just manufactured boxes. But they know now that I build schools and I build buildings, and there are times we drive by some of the projects I've done, and I'm like, mommy was a part of that. And that's really great for me, and that's the gratification that I love, is just being able to share that with my kids, and that they see it, and that they see women in this space.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you have made a pretty big impact relatively early in your career too. What are some of your goals moving forward for yourself, like developing in the future?
That is a great question.
Put you on the spot a little bit, but
yeah, I will say, early on, the being laid off from my first job that really did affect my career and how I looked at things, and that you're disposable to companies a lot of the time when things are hard. And so from that, I really didn't fine tune what I wanted to do. But I will say, and this is key for everyone, is to not get complacent. So I have shifted the work that I do pretty often, not often, but every couple years, like if you're not getting anything from the role that you're in, the company that you're with, like if they're not filling your cup, it's time to move on. And so that's sort of how I've been working my career. And also it's helping me identify what I really want to do and what I'm really passionate about. Um, I don't know if Matt's on this call, he might freak out, but this might ruffle some feathers. Listen, if you are in a role after 2 years and you've got all you need to know from that role, you either need to grow in that company or you need to move on. And I say this because I was able to triple my salary in 10 years time, at that point in my career. So I think that's super important, especially as women, because we are forever behind the pay gap for men in this industry. That's something else that doesn't get discussed enough. And especially as you have families and you have maternity leave and you have all of these considerations that you need to make, your salary is huge. And so you can't afford to stay in the same place for a long period of time if it's not serving you. And the way I kind of frame companies I'm with, the organizations I'm with, or the work I'm doing, like, is this a fountain for me or is it a drain? And so if it's not a fountain for you anymore, move on. There are likely folks on this call that may not agree with that messaging, but right now I'm in a space that I didn't anticipate. You know, I'm overseeing technology services and pupil transportation and all of these things. So I enjoy that, but school construction is really where my heart has been. And so just being a chief operating officer was not on my bingo card, but I'm here and I love it. And I'm doing meaningful work and impactful work for the students of Richmond. And so I'm happy with that. I'm satisfied.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's really important to keep the why are you doing this? You know, have that passion, see that impact that you're making, and it really makes a difference. You're not just a cog in the machine. You're
Right.
doing something
Yep.
meaningful. Yeah. Um, I guess we're kind of close on time here, but I'll ask one more question before we open it up to everybody. What has been your greatest source of support throughout your career?
Um, I would say, obviously, my husband, just being my sounding board for all of the nonsense that I sometimes encounter. But I would say really the relationships that I've made over the years. I don't necessarily have a woman in this industry that's been my point person, but I do have men in this industry who are super helpful. I have friends that I went to school with who are super helpful. But I always say for myself and for other people, like, be the person you wish you had. So I try to be that for other young women in this industry. Like, I wish I had someone who had been in the role for a bit, to work off of. But in any space, like, be the person you wish you had, whether it's a new mom, a pregnant mom, a working mom, all of that. So I really just lean on folks that I've known in this business for a while. And it is a small business. Like, construction is a large industry, but locally, like, you'll see people year over year, whether they're with the same company or not. You kind of see them in different settings. So definitely keep tabs on folks that really have meaningful impact on your career or have had it over the years. Lean on those folks for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. And just say I'm hopeful that we're trying to be those people that all of us didn't have growing up or advancing in our careers. And hopefully there will be women for the younger women to look up to and have be that sounding board. Um, all right, so I'm gonna open it up to anyone in the audience. We haven't had any chats come in yet, but right now you can feel free to unmute yourselves. If you even want to show your video, you're more than welcome to. Just know that this will be released on YouTube if you're not comfortable with that. And if you don't want to show yourself or talk, you can write it in the chat, put it in the Q&A. I think we might have a Q&A pop up. Yes, so Tammy Lee asked, who has been your biggest ally and or role model? So it's kind of bouncing off that last topic that we had.
Yeah. Gosh, I think just in this industry, I have several. I was a member of the NAWIC. We were talking about this earlier,
Yeah.
the National Association of Women in Construction. So I was a member of that organization for a number of years, and some of those ladies are still really good friends of mine, and they are in this space, and so super helpful to text them, and I just love like watching the work that they do. And I don't know about role model. I think I like staying in touch with folks who I've worked with before. Um, I don't know. I'm kind of all over the place when it comes to things, and so I think I find my way. And I'm one of those people that you can share your advice on how to do something. I'm going to do it the way I wanted to do it anyway. It's
Maybe
hard.
you are your own role model in that
I don't
way.
know. I'm my own worst enemy most of the time, but I did have a professor in college. She was a woman, and she was in NAWIC down in North Carolina, who was a really great resource for me for a number of years. And she died. She had brain cancer, and she passed away. But I would say over the years, she was probably a good person that in this industry who I really looked up to and admired for the work that she was doing.
Yeah. We did have a question come in from, let me see, where did I put that email? We had somebody with a registration question, and they asked what advice you would give to women who are just starting out in their careers.
Ask all the questions. Try to be confident in the space that you're in. I know it's hard. Send yourself flowers. I did that my very
Mm.
first job. I sent myself flowers, and I was single at the time, wasn't married, so they came from me. Um, and same grandma, she was like, that was a really ballsy move. She still talks about that. I sent myself flowers when I started my first big girl job, and actually just because I am who I am, I sent myself flowers when I started as COO. And so just kind of in that moment, and it's one of those like movie moments where I was in a cubicle and sent myself flowers, and now I'm on the top floor in a corner
Yeah.
office, and it sounds really cliche and lame, but I think just know that you're starting somewhere, but you're going somewhere too, and really take ownership of that and enjoy it. Learn everything that you can, and um, ask questions for sure.
Yeah. We have, let's see, Lauren shared in the Q&A, as a woman in architecture, I find it as empowering to walk into a meeting and remind myself of ways that I bring strength to the project as a woman rather than just feeling like I need to be equal to the men. What would you say you have seen are strengths women specifically bring to the table?
I think the way we think of things is exciting and innovative around certain things, especially when it comes to solutions. When there are problems, the way women can get to a solution is often um, a little more resourceful and efficient. So
Mm.
I find that to be very interesting and intriguing, especially when I'm in a space with other women around these conversations, and how you get to the solution, because of course construction things happen all the time and they happen instantly, and there is nothing a woman can do better than multitask and handle multiple things at one time. It's not tunnel vision, it's a way to shift around. So and kudos to you for being an architect and doing all the things. But yeah, it's just a different way of thinking, not better, not worse, it's just different. And so I think coupled with the men in the room, like you really have a powerful path forward for the projects that you're on.
Yeah, it always seems like the more variations of ways that people can look at a problem, the better your end solution will be.
Yeah.
Definitely. Um, so Greg asked where he can find this on YouTube to share, and Megan did share in response to that in the Q&A for anybody else who has the same question, a link to our YouTube channel. It's Thompson Consulting Engineers on YouTube. And this will be up here. All previous sessions are up there, and future ones will be too. So we've got some compliments in the chat. Thank you. Maureen says that she has a daughter starting college this fall, planning to study engineering. And these discussions are so important. She says she loves the perspective, especially of some of the younger generation. So yeah, that's again speaking to what you said, wanting to introduce this to the younger generation, get them interested, involved, show them that there are people who look like them who are doing this and will support them in it.
Absolutely. And congratulations to your daughter. That's exciting. I will say I'm super proud of the work that all of you are doing, and you know, Celia, for your organization for teeing this up. But I say this a lot, like my sons will not know a construction site should they ever be in this world. They will not know a construction site without a woman on it, and neither will my daughter. And so that is huge for me, to be in that space. And so I'm just super proud of that, and super proud of everyone on this call and then some that make that a reality for my kiddos and for others as well. Like, this isn't something where, you know, your daughter is not likely not going to go in her engineering class and sit down and be told that she's the only female in the class. And so that's huge, just in a matter of 15, 20 years, how much that's changed. Sounds like a long time, but truly it's not.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, Tammy Lee is also in the National Association of Women in Construction, so she says you're awesome. We would
Oh,
second
Tammy, yes,
that.
yes. She's a friend. Oh, wonderful. I'm glad she
Awesome.
got one. Thank you, Tammy Lee.
Yeah. Well, we're getting pretty close. I don't know, Dana, is there any last stuff that you'd like to share with everybody? Maybe more advice or suggestions on how to keep connecting in these areas? Maybe share some other organizations that you're involved with that you'd like to plug. We'd love to hear
Um,
that.
yeah, so I think in terms of organizations, definitely join the ones you can join. I will say I am not an active member in NAWIC anymore, just due to time constraints. And when you're in public sector work, they don't tend to pay for organizations. You have to pay out of pocket. So, you know, that's a big piece of why I'm not part of that, but they are a wonderful organization to be a part of. I know there are several others. I do want to caution folks, like, make sure when you join things that you're really gaining something from it, and that you're not just paying to do happy hours that aren't really fruitful for you. So I have noticed over the last couple of years, especially around things like TikTok and things, that women in construction is starting to become almost kind of a gimmick. It's becoming a marketing sort of thing as it comes to different podcasts or memberships or clothing or all of those things, which is great. I support that, but I just caution folks to not pay money into something that is not serving you, or you know, delivering on things that are useful for you. But it is exciting that, you know, we're getting kind of our own space in the market. But I think there are wonderful organizations. I don't know what everybody's background is here. Certainly, if you're in engineering, there's probably organizations around that. But really, anyone that was on this call, like, plug into these folks, send an email, meet up for coffee, or just, you know, exchange phone numbers, go through text message, emails, anything like that. I'm happy to tee up any conversations with anyone that was here today, to further conversations or just to make introductions and network elsewhere.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the goals of this group, is not just to have us talking at each other, but to set up the connections in the community and keep the discussions going outside of this too. So
Right.
appreciate that. And I did say earlier that I would put my email in the chat, so I will do that right now. Pardon the silence. Okay, there we go. And yeah, anyone's welcome to reach out to me, email, LinkedIn, all of that. If you'd like to be a speaker in the future, we're also always looking for new people too. We want to share all sorts of insights. You don't have to be experienced in your career necessarily, and you don't have to be an engineer. Like, I'm an engineer. We've talked to a bunch of people who are in different portions of the construction industry. For example, our next speaker will be an architect, Stephanie Kalantarians, will be joining us on April 17th. And I think Megan will send a link. Yes, okay, she's typing. She's going to send a link to the registration for that one. So we'd love to have everybody join us then as well. We just want to keep this rolling. It's been awesome so far. And Dana, thank you so much. I think you really gave a lot of incredible insight and background and everything. It was great to talk to you. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And again, thank you guys for what you're doing to host these, and however I can support going forward and getting the message out, I'm happy to do that. And then to anyone still on the call, please connect with me on LinkedIn, and let's share networks and resources and things like that to keep the conversation going. But Celia, you and Megan are out here doing the Lord's work, so you are appreciated. And I'm just excited to see how this grows for you guys. Is really great.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone. Thank you all for spending your lunch with us as well. I hope you enjoyed it. And like I said, please give any feedback that you have. I'd love to hear it, love to grow this in a way that helps you get what you need.
Right.
Thank you, everyone.